I'm AJ Kalatunga, the creator of Dream Build Inspire Lead, and today I've got an amazing opportunity here to interview one of the experts in leadership of our time. You know, you've heard about traditional leadership and you've heard about, you know, tribal leadership, but today I'm very honored to have on the stage, or in this call, Adam Voigt, who's an expert in precision leadership. So Adam, thanks so much for taking the time out from your schedule to come talk to us today. And first of all, mate, I have to ask, why is leadership so important today?
Oh, look, for me, AJ, I think the most important thing about leadership today is that I actually think that it's probably the most important commodity in the world today. I think we've gone through an incredibly expansive digital age where information is out there and everything like that. And so we're not short of ideas and we're not short of things to do. And if you're wanting to, like my experience is in running education, but if you, no matter what field you're in, if you're looking for a way to go about your business, then you're not short of someone to tell you what to do. So I think that these days the imperative for our leaders is to be able to take that information, to be able to synthesize it, to be able to use their intuition, to be able to, you know, challenge convention and tradition, so that your organisation or even your industry isn't passed by others who will innovate more and will genuinely grab that leadership bull by the horns.
Yeah. Do you think that's a reality, that other people actually will strive to become better leaders? I mean, in the business context, like I know that leadership's a word that's thrown around by a lot of businesses, but what's your opinion on, you know, in terms of your competitors actually maybe becoming better leaders than you? Like, how can people deal with that?
I think that, like I said, these days it's not hard to get your hands on somebody else's strategic plan or somebody else's template for how you should go about building your business. But the leaders who actually, you know, develop exponential growth and the leaders who actually really, you know, mobilise their people behind a vision, they're the ones who are actually working on their leadership character as well as their leadership strategy. So for me, it's about your capacity and your ability to work with people and your ability to get the very best out of your team, so that you're not putting a ceiling on what they can do with your, you know, strategic plan or your idea for where you would like your business to be, that you're opening up each of the individuals in your team to some really, you know, some exponential growth, and, you know, really finding out what they can do if you empower them and if you provide those perfect conditions for them to do wonderful stuff. I think that's where, you know, the very best leaders are working that out now. And they're working out that you really need to focus on the way you connect with people, the way you empower them, the way you mobilise them, if you're looking to get, you know, new growth in your business.
I think that's a great point that you made, and you're right. The new leaders now, the leaders of this generation and this economy, you know, they're starting to empower their staff, and that's really important. What's your advice to a business owner that has heard? I think it was Bill Gates who says that he loves hiring. No, it wasn't Bill Gates. It was someone else. But they said they love to hire people better than them, you know, which effectively makes them the dumbest one in the room. I mean, I know 1,000 small business owners that actually feel bad when they're not the smartest one in the room. I mean, what do you say to those business owners like that?
I know that, like, for myself, as somebody who's worked in education, probably there's one principal that I can think of in schools in the Northern Territory, whose philosophy was always to employ people who wanted her job. And you know, and that meant that, you know, she was constantly, you know, people were constantly criticising her because she wasn't bringing in people who were prepared to stay for 10 years and sit behind her in the field. But she always brought people in who came in and, you know, she trained them and she mentored them, she coached them to be better than even they thought they could be. And and as a result, they might not have stayed with her forever because they went out and became principals and became higher level leaders themselves. But along the track, she became that person that everybody wanted to work with. As a result, her school was winning awards. She was winning an award for Principal of the Year in the Northern Territory. And by constantly surrounding yourself with people who would like to maintain the status quo, you just don't create new growth for your business. You don't find out what the sky is that these people could actually reach.
Isn't that so counterintuitive, though? I mean, we've been raised to sort of, I know in my culture, you know, we have to respect our elders and we should never, you know, put them to shame and stuff like that. I guess what you talk about is a cultural shift, and that's some of the work that you're doing on a larger scale, isn't it, with the engineering stuff. I love that term. So maybe you could, like, give us a bit more around that term of how you're changing the culture of the workplace in your grand scheme of things.
For me, the examination of culture I just find incredibly fascinating, because I think that really great leaders get the idea of culture. They understand that condition creating is an enormous part of their work, and that sometimes if you can create a culture that is so productive and so responsive for the people that are in it, that you can almost step out of the way. And your plans and your intentions almost become irrelevant, because the people that you've got in your team actually start to create something really new, and they create what I would refer to in education as an emergent phenomena. You create this system, this culture, and from it comes something that you didn't expect. And great leaders are the people that actually allow that to happen. And it's interesting. We often do look for mentors. We often do look for people who we think are great examples who can show us the way. And and I'm no different. And for me, it was I always live by Norman Schwarzkopf, the American general's approach to leadership, and he said that leadership is a combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without strategy. And now he was a fella who's in his work, in just his everyday run-of-the-mill work that he did, people lived and died by the decisions that he made. Yeah. And regardless, he was not focusing on what those decisions were, but on who the leader is that he was. And he knew that people don't follow plans, people don't follow strategies, people don't follow, mission, objectives. They follow leaders, they follow character. And more and more these days, when those strategies and those plans are available to us, we can all do it. Anybody can write a business plan. Anybody can write a strategic plan for their business or their organisation. But if we haven't actually paid focused attention with what I like to say with precision to what our leadership character is, then we just won't have those people come in behind us and be the best they can be.
That's so true, isn't it? That's so true. Now, in your perspective of the world, what do you think the greatest challenge is for an up-and-coming leader to succeed in today?
For myself, I think it's getting some balance around the way that you lead, but most importantly, having the critical things about contemporary leadership in place. And for me, I guess there are three, and this is, I guess, me in building my own model for leadership, and some of my leadership experience has been around education. So for me, that's about taking into account the anecdote or the story of the people that you work with. It's also making sure that you are consciously using your intuition. And I think that 20 years ago, an educational leader, an engineer, or somebody even running a small business or a government department could perhaps be relied upon to be the knowledge king, to be the person who knows the most about the business. But these days, just about any business that you're in, there's too much to know. What you have to be as a leader is the person who can not only delegate to other people who have areas of subject matter expertise, but you also need to be able to be the person who says, okay, I can take what I know and not know it for the purpose of doing what other people are doing, but know it for the purpose of challenging convention and tradition and finding new innovative ways to simplify your business, to simplify your work, and to therefore do things that other people haven't done before. And I guess the other thing that I really like to consider is evidence. I don't like leadership strategies, particularly when we're paying attention to both character and strategy. Don't like leadership approaches that are all about, let's be fluffy and wonderful and have catchphrases and all that sort of stuff. I'm big on effectiveness. And to me, it's one thing to innovate, but it's another to be able to prove that what you do makes a difference. And I think that when you do that, you not only make yourself relevant within your organisation, but you make yourself relevant externally too. So if you're working in a government department or you're leading a part of an organisation, when you innovate and you can prove that what you do makes a difference, then you attract further resource, you attract further support to do more of that and to use that approach more often in other business areas. So making sure that you are focused on evidence is a really important thing for me too.
That's huge. That's huge. So just on that point, are leaders popular?
Don't need to be, but that what they do need to be is focused on relationships. And I think popularity is a really it's a really interesting subject. And as an example, popularity can be it can be important in some regards. In that if you're popular, often it's an artifact of the fact that you've actually focused on relationships and you've tried really hard to make sure that the people in your organisation are connected to you, that you know their background, you know their story. But the other part, the downside of popularity, if they can, these days most people don't think there is a downside to popularity, but the downside to popularity is that everybody has an opinion, and that those opinions are not always relevant. And I've always thought my background in education is always, that everybody unfortunately went to school. And that means that everybody has an opinion on what a good school is and what a bad school is. So do we need to listen to everybody's opinion, or do we actually need our people that are in education to lead, to say we're the subject matter experts here, we're going to be the ones that innovate, we're going to be the ones that reject advances and encroaches on our business for the sake of doing what we know and have learned to have been the very best stuff. So, when it gets down to, that as an example, there's always, I always use the example in talking to people that it's a bit like, saying that you're an expert on education because you went to school is a bit like saying that you're a qualified plumber because you've been to the toilet. And so for me, it's really important that educational leaders grab the bull by the horns and say, we're the ones that own this, we're going to make a difference. And I actually think that's critically important for organisational leaders and business leaders to do the same thing if they're looking to stay ahead of competitors who might be doing a little bit of, I need to listen to everybody's opinion so that I can be popular.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I think that, and it's great to seek other people's opinions, but at the end of the day, I believe that leadership, the buck stops with you, as corny as it sounds, and just on that thing of dealing with relationships and stuff like that, I want to pick your brains now about great leaders know how to get along well with people, right? What happens if you lead a team and there's just one person in the team that's like an energy zapper? They try to bring everyone else into their own little world of disaster, Like, how does a leader deal with such a person? Like, what's some strategies that you use or tactics that you use, or teach rather, to deal with that? How do you deal with a person like that?
Like I said to the start, AJ, I think the imperative of leaders is to mobilise the people that you have behind a vision. So for me, that means that what you're trying to do is to create a critical mass of people who believe in what you're doing. So unfortunately, when you get those squeaky wheels in an organisation who are anchors on your progression and on the outcomes that you want to achieve and on the innovation and on the imagination that you want to have in your business. My first strategy would be to try and make sure that they realise that they're not the majority. So mobilising the people who are behind that vision and making sure that they have a voice is really important. The other thing about that is that creating an organisation where challenge is something that people are familiar with and understand and experience in a really safe way is really important. So for me, that means as a leader, how can I be focused to make sure that I have a leadership character that is both firm and fair? So what we find is that, and this is using some old schooly restorative stuff, is that what we find is that when we get the firmness in place but we're not fair with people, we do stuff to them all the time. So we're on them and, you do something wrong and that means that I'm going to dock your pay. When we're all fair but we're not firm, then we do stuff for them all the time. So, and that's where the person who, is the anchor on your organisation is always negative and is always trying to drag people into their negativity. Well, we start doing, I could see you're a bit upset. I'm really sorry about that. No, we're not. People like that need to be really uncomfortable with the conditions that they're creating. And when we get that firm and fairness stuff in place, people genuinely feel that we're not doing stuff to them, we're not doing stuff for them, we're doing stuff with them. And when we actually have people that we're walking side by side with, you can challenge them about their behaviour. Because where you're firm and fair, you're a respect builder. And when you have that respect, challenge comes naturally, it comes comfortably, and people respond to it. So the first one is make sure that you don't create a climate where it's okay to be an anchor. And then the second thing is to create a climate where you can actually challenge that anchor and get some growth out of it.
Yeah, that's really important, and you've hit the nail on the head there, because it's not always about, like you said, it's not always about being popular and holding hands and singing Kumbaya, is it? I mean, leaders' job, like as we sort of spoke about before, is about turning that vision, and mobilizing resources, and that's people, processes, things, whatnot, to achieve that vision, and that's so important. And I love your point about creating a culture where it's okay to challenge that, that negativity. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Here's another one for you. Respect.
Yes.
Respect can be earned. I believe respect can be commanded, but should it be demanded ever?
You can demand respect all you like, but if you haven't earned it or commanded it, it won't come. So, we need to think about, first of all, when you talk about earning respect, how does that happen? How can people strategise to make sure that they are respectful towards people? And unfortunately, sometimes, that word respect, it gets that warm, fuzzy, fluffy feeling around it that, that if people will respect me if I'm nice to them. Well, if we think back into our own youths, or into days when we might have been a little off the rails or something like that, and somebody who we respected challenged us, they weren't that person who was always nice to us.
No,
they were someone who believed in us and were so deeply affected by the way that we were behaving and by the failure to meet a high expectation that they just had to call our behaviour on it. So a good leader understands that, and they work in a very focused and precise way to be able to create the conditions so that when I need to challenge, I've got some credits in the bank to be able to do that. So if we sit in our offices all day and we're not actually working with the people who are at the coalface as leaders, because often leaders are removed from the coalface but just by position, if we're only removed from the coalface and we haven't actually been to see who these people are and actually invested a little bit in who they are and in that professional relationship, when challenge time comes, we've got no credits to call on. We're standing at the ATM with the machine telling us you don't have enough balance in your account to do this.
True.
So great leaders get that, and they make deposits. And that's not about being nice, but it's about making sure that you know who your people are, you know where they're coming from, you know what their plan for improvement is. Nothing motivates people like improvement. So making sure that you have people on board and you have invested in their improvement will give you the credits to be able to challenge people when you need to.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I want to ask you, how did you fall into all this leadership stuff? I mean, I know that I've shared the stage with you for TEDx Darwin, and that was an amazing experience for both of us. And I know that your background is in the education industry, but at what point did you really start thinking about leadership? At what point in your career? Was it when you were a kid or when you were an adult, teenager? How did you fall into leadership, or what attracted you to leadership?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said fall into leadership for me. It was definitely something that happened by accident, and I think I began leading without being conscious that I was leading. And it probably happened for me outside of my profession before it happened inside my profession.
Wow.
So for me, when I started to become more confident in sport, and I started to do a bit of coaching, and I became the captain of my team in cricket and things like that. And I started to learn some lessons about what it took to get people to perform. And I think that came from the fact that I wasn't a very good cricketer. And my team wasn't going to succeed because I was the fantastic cricketer in the competition, and I could tear everybody apart, and that meant that my team would win. That wasn't going to happen. So for me, it became, how can I work out ways to have the other 10 guys in my team lift their game and be a better performer than they had been. And then I think I started to think, hang on, this stuff sort of applies a little bit in my work as well. And I think that's where the light bulb came on. And I haven't really lost a lot of that focus about leadership, because I do believe that the great leaders are not the people who know the most about the business, not the people who can write the best strategic plan, not the people who can set the most accurate outcomes, not the people who can write the most glowing or annual report about what our progress has been. The best leaders are the ones who mobilise their people to be the best they can be. And so those lessons from early sport have applied for me all the way through my working career, and in leading people, and in taking on complex challenges like being the principal of a new primary school where we had people come from a community came from 36 different schools on its previous day of experience in a school, teachers from 25 different schools on their previous day of work. So that provides the wonderful and also incredibly horrible blank slate situation, where you think, oh, that's fantastic. If only I could start from scratch without all this tradition and history of things we've done and all that sort of stuff. Until you've got it, then you go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? And but that's about people. It's about if you can focus on. For me, it was about. I had, at the school, for instance, I had all of these, 36 different schools, 26 different schools of people who had an idea about how the lunch orders should get to the canteen at the start of the day. Which meant I was incredibly likely to, anger 98% of them who, because no matter what I chose, 98% of them would be disappointed. So it's not about what you choose to do. And Norman Schwarzkopf knew that when he said it's not about strategy. It's about how you make decisions. And if people can understand how you make decisions, then they will fall in behind you, and they will show you trust and respect. And so that's why I focus very much on how our leaders go about work, how they communicate with their teams, the way that they will work, and they can do that through some really powerful metaphors, and how they can develop their own model for their leadership character that they can use for themselves to be able to reflect upon and say, you know what, I had a good week, I did a fair bit of this. Next week I'm going to try and get myself a little bit more balanced on this side of the model. And I think when people have the opportunity to do that, they really unlock some potential they didn't know was there.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, man. And you're spot on about that, because it's all about recognizing the potential in people. And I just got back tonight from a networking session with John Anderson, who's the founder of Kentucky Tours. And John tells the most, he's got a book out, only 2 seats left, but that's another story for another time. And he just told the most amazing story of how he built this multi-million-dollar organization when he started it himself. And it grew from a desire to just basically travel Europe cheaper than what was on offer. It's an amazing story, John Anderson. And one of the things that he says in his corporate culture at Kentucky was this whole thing of, sort of biting off more than you can chew, but he calls it a hunk of meat. That's what he calls it. It's called a hunk of meat, and he gives it to his entire team. So he gets a lot of young people in there, late teens, early 20s, and he gives them a hunk of meat. And what he says by that is that it's almost an impossible challenge, right? And not impossible, rather, it's a difficult challenge. And his team is not sure if this young person can achieve it. The young person pretty much is sure that they cannot achieve it. But it's about biting off more than you can chew and chewing like hell, And he says that was his best strategy, or that was his best tactic, rather, of growing people and turning them into leaders, and those people that ate the meat, conquered the hunk of meat, they became his team leaders, right? And to give you an example, once Kentucky started growing, they wanted to start getting into properties, owning villas and owning chateaus and things like that. And so one of the hunk of meat that he sent out, some of his team, was find a chateau, how do we buy it and all that, and they consume those problems, But I wonder, what is it about him, or what is it about leaders that when they look at a person, they're able to see some sort of a potential in them? What's your comment on that? Like, how do you look at a person? I mean, you're an education expert, like you've been so many young people, you see so many young people. What is it? How does a leader look at their team and see potential? Like, what are your strategies on that?
Look, I really love that metaphor about the meat. I know a colleague of mine who uses a very similar one. She asks, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've always believed as a principle, and this was something that, was not very popular view as a principle, not one of those espoused views as a principle, is that, most job interviews might be set aside for half an hour when you're talking to a teacher that you might be about to employ. About 30 seconds in, you've got a fair idea. And about whether this is someone that you want on your team or not. And they haven't told you anything about what they know about curriculum or what they know about students, what they know about learning, what they know about planning. But you've got an idea of their character and you've got an idea of whether they will take the first bite of the elephant. And
what gives you that idea, though? Because I know I do it all the time, you know, but like you said, you know, like some people listening to this interview might think we're being judgmental or leaders, you know, never gave me an opportunity to shine. But what's your comment on that?
I think it's just people who exhibit a natural enthusiasm to do the work, and people who are, you know, it's very easy for people to buy in behind leaders who have natural enthusiasm for that and who are willing to get their hands dirty occasionally and who connect with their people. And it works the other way too. Is for leaders, if you're wanting to attach yourself to a good leader, you need to be the person who shows enthusiasm for getting your hands dirty, who shows enthusiasm for taking the first bite of the elephant when nobody else wants to tackle the task. And you need to show that your skills are not only formed, but they're ready to be applied and they're ready to be used in a creative way. And you have to show that you're interested in growth, that you're interested in improvement. And if you like that, leaders identify all of a sudden, hey, this person's got something to offer me. And everything like that. Yeah, and even if you don't know what it is yet, leaders will be so compelled to find out that they go, employ, need this person with me. And, I've just got a feeling they're going to do great things. And that's about when I spoke to you before, AJ, about leaders who trust their intuition. Confident leaders will do that. They will see that, hang on, there's some potential here. I'm going to challenge a little bit of convention and tradition and not care what they say about all 8 selection criteria. And I'm actually going to make a pretty quick call that this person has some enthusiasm, they have some drive, they have some commitment to improvement, they've got something to offer. I want to work with this person. And when we talked about those respect ideas, that comes when we're high on fair and firm. When you get a feeling that you can do that with someone, that I could really encourage this person. I'm going to be really fair and give them their head and let them find out what they can do. But I'm going to be firm and I'm going to challenge them. I'm going to set incredibly high expectations for them, and I think it's still going to work. You go, that's the person I want to work with.
Wow, that's really insightful and it's exciting, And now one of the questions that I always ask interviewees is, what did you want to be as a kid? Just out of curiosity, what did you want to be as a kid when you were 6, 7 years old?
Yeah, centre half forward for the Richmond Football Club.
What happened?
Pretty quickly, unfortunately, I worked out that that my ability was never going to quite let me get to that point, and it probably came from my father giving me subtle hints like remember, if you pull your socks up, because if you can't be a good footballer, at least look like a good footballer, and so there was always that. I had those very typical boyhood dreams about what I wanted to do, but in the end, it was really, for me, I think as I got a bit older and became a little bit more confident and a little bit more sure about who I was becoming, it was always going to be about working with people, and working with, learning seemed to fit into that really well, because I still am a very firm believer that, as businesses start to pick up on what actually motivates people to improve, they will start to tap in more effectively to the theory of learning. And look, I know that everybody runs around quoting Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs very, very much understood that, because when he invented the iPod, he developed a device that was truly personalised. By personalising it, you engage with it on a higher level. Where there's engagement, there's learning, and where there's learning, there's voluntary cooperation. Where there's voluntary cooperation, there is trust, loyalty, respect. All of those things happen, and it's a really simple formula. But if we, as business leaders and corporate leaders, start to pick up on that if we can engage people in learning, as a lever for people to move forward, then and allow them to learn and allow them to improve on something that engages them. And I think there's one of the things I always tell people about leadership that's really important is for the people that you lead, it's more important that they choose improvement than it is for them to choose the right improvement.
Of course.
Eventually they'll get to the thing that you want them to improve if they get excited about improvement.
Exactly, and I think, and that whole story just summarizes, I mean, I know like a very little of your career. I mean, we've only known each other for a year, but I'm just amazed by your story and what you're achieving in the world today. And I think from everything that I know of you, the first person that you led was yourself. and I think that's remarkable. And honestly, mate, I've got to tell you, if you had been a forward for Richmond Football Club, the world would not be a better place, So, and one of the greatest pleasures I get in life
Richmond wouldn't have been either. So.
One of the greatest pleasures I get in life is seeing, amazing potential speakers and educators like yourself just grow and blossom through your career. And I know that you've got a whole bunch of programs and workshops that's happening, around the country, and you're probably going global soon too. What can a participant expect when they come to one of your leadership workshops? Like, what do you teach them?
Transformation. So for me, it's about what I'd really love people to do is to be able to. I'm not the guy that's going to bring you into a room and trot out the 7 principles for being an effective leader, because if they existed, we would have discovered them by now, and the world would be full of incredible leaders. Okay, yeah. It doesn't work like that. Strategizing to become a better leader doesn't work. It takes focused attention on your leadership character and the how you are leading, not the what you are deciding to do. So people who come to the leadership workshops and the seminars and the events that I'm running around the country at the moment will have a close examination of what it means to focus on your leadership character. They'll have a look at models for leadership and have a think about what might work for them. So you're not just going to hear about my model for leadership. You're going to look at what are the different models that might apply to my area of business, and how can I develop something so that at the end of a really rough day, I can pull out that sketch from my top drawer of my desk and say, how did I go? Did I stay on track today? Can I reflect upon this stuff? And did it help me? Can I learn to improve so that the next day is a better one, or the next week, or the next month, whatever it is. And then I will work with people on communicative metaphors. So what I mean by that is, what's the story that you tell your team about the way you lead? I didn't want my team in a brand new school to know about my model that was in the top drawer. That was for me. Okay, but what I did want them to know was, what's the story about how I'll lead? And so I told them that I would lead the school like a Formula One racing car team. That I would be the director of the team, and that I believe that the teachers in a school are the drivers, and I believe that's the way a lot of hierarchically, traditionally structured organisations work, that there's a leader who doesn't do most of the coalface work. So respecting the coalface workers, and I place the teachers as the drivers in the Formula One racing car team. And I would say that they're the ones that do crazy things like take hairpin turns at 250 kilometres an hour by doing the equivalent of crazy things like trying to teach fractions to 9-year-old boys. So they're the ones that crash and burn if they get it wrong. They're the ones that need to stand on the podium and be showered with champagne when they get it right. My job as the director is to give them the best advice, to make sure they have the best fuel, to make sure they have the best pit crew, to make sure that they have the very best technology to be able to drive a Formula One racing car team really, really fast. And
wow.
So that was my metaphor. And people could remember it, they could understand it. And I can draw from people when they come to a Precision Leadership event, those metaphors that they can use to show people how they're working. When you get that in place, we can look at some truly disruptive innovation that can transform your entire business, and do it without you having to be the person that drives the whole thing. Because you've got people behind you, you've got them innovating, the ideas come from within, the enabling comes from you.
Wow, that's huge, man. That's really powerful. And say I'm inspired to be a leader. How do I get more out of you? Like, is there a website or something I can go to? Like, how do you promote yourself?
Yeah, sure is, mate. There's just adamvoigt.com, particularly at adamvoigt.com.au, for the people who are particularly in the education space, who are looking to do some work around schools or learning in their organisation. And there's also Precision Leadership. So Precision Leadership is precisionleadership.com.au, and there you can find out a little bit about what we're doing in terms of transforming business, corporate and organisational groups to be the best they can be, by having a good look at that leadership character that's in there somewhere for all of us. We've just got to find that way to unlock it.
Wow, that's huge, man. And nice and easy addresses there, adamvoigt.com.au and precisionleadership.com.au. Mate, thank you so much for your time today. You really inspired me, and I always believe that leadership is not something that you should not really lead by example, but lead through motivation. And you've motivated the hell out of me, man. So thank you. And it's truly an amazing experience watching you just change the world as you roll out through your workshops and whatnot. And so anyone here watching this interview today, please go and check out Adam and check out everything that he's doing, because if you want to get on board and change the world and really get on board that mission and become a better leader, he's the guy to help you out. So thank you, Adam, once again for spending this time with me. It's been great sort of, hearing your thoughts on leadership. And for all of you out there, my final message is dream great dreams, build amazing things, inspire those around you, lead through motivation, and go be better leaders, and check out Adam's stuff today. Thank you so much.